Trudy sitting in for Elias on this lovely July day in Montreal. I've been enjoying the weather, the sunshine streaming in through the window. Yeah, there are a few clouds around, but it's all good. 22 degrees, the humidex only 25. What a relief from recent days. Hope you're able to enjoy it at some point today as well. On the Elias Macco Show right now, we're going to talk about some numbers showing an increase in bicycle versus bicycle collisions. Joining us for the conversation is Magali Bebronne. She's the program director for Vélo Quebec. And of course, you've heard of Vélo Quebec before. It's the cyclist advocacy group. Magali, thank you for joining us on CJ 8800.
Thank you for the invitation.
What do we know about what is going on with bike versus bike collisions?
Well, the main problem is we know very little. Every year our road safety portrait is the one released by the FAQ, so the Automobile Insurance Board. But the problem we have is it's only considered an accident and actually recorded into the statistics that the FAQ holds if a motor vehicle is involved. So we might be boasting about how, things are improving on our roads, but the truth is we don't really know because a whole section of victims and a whole portion of victims are unaccounted because of that criteria.
Where do these bike-on-bike collisions tend to happen?
Well, they can happen anywhere, really, but they do happen on bike infrastructure as well. One of the reasons is that some of our bike infrastructure is a little old. It is outdated. It is old standards. If you think at bidirectional bike paths that are 3 meters large for two directions, it's easy to understand how with the rise in e-bikes, for example, we have a lot more users and users with different speeds who are overtaking each other, and that can lead to head-on collisions or all types of collisions. And so anecdotally, we're hearing more and more people who are included in these kinds of crashes.
So these are the ones where you have opposing traffic basically in very, very close proximity. Do you also see collisions at intersections? Because, it can be tricky for cyclists to move through intersections because I think they're mainly concerned with the cars that may be hitting them and may not be watching out for other bikes coming.
Yes, it can be all types of interactions. It can be somebody overtaking you while you're turning left, for example, and maybe you haven't signaled, or maybe that person shouldn't have overtaken you. Of course, there's a lot happening, and you need to have eyes all around your head, and you need to be paying attention to pedestrians and cars and such. The truth is also with the new kinds of users that we're seeing, these might be people who haven't cycled in a long time or were never actually cyclists in the first place, but with e-bikes, they're discovering the pleasure of getting around by bike, and they might be missing a few codes on how to behave, how you shouldn't be stopping in the middle of a bike path if you have something to fix, may not be able to signal their intentions or not be thinking of doing so. And we've even seen instances of crashes that involve pedestrians and cyclists, and in some cases, pedestrians are the one getting hurt, but in the last couple of years, we've had instances of a cyclist dying in one of these instances where the pedestrian just stepped out on the bike path without acknowledging that there was a cyclist, and that's how it ended.
What is Vélo Quebec's position on the sharing of bike paths by e-scooters, e-bikes, other forms of transit?
Well, we're in favor of microtransit because it's actually allowing some modal share, and at the end of the day, the greatest threat on the road are cars. So anybody who replaces a car trip with micromobility is probably a positive for all of society. Now, the problem is we have a very outdated definition of what an e-bike is, and we actually have e-motorcycles that are allowed on or that think that they are allowed on bike paths because the definition is completely outdated. We've been calling on the province to revise the definition, to exclude all of those because it's very uncomfortable, and that's something that cyclists have been witnessing and telling us. It is uncomfortable to share the bike path with a motorcycle that tries to pass as an e-bike.
So is that because of the size of it, or is that because of the speed that the users tend to travel?
Well, these vehicles are heavier and they're usually throttle vehicles, which means they can reach and maintain a higher speed at all times. They can also carry passengers, so it's easy to understand how in the event of a crash, it would make a difference. And people feel that intuitively. It does come with this sense of insecurity. So it's very clear that these need to be excluded. There's also a double penalty that if you get into a crash with one of these, you won't be compensated. They should be considered motor vehicles, but they're not registered because they're trying to pass as e-bikes, and that means they're not covered by the SAQ coverage. So it's the double penalty where you get hurt by a device that shouldn't be on the bike path in the first place, and then when you try and get compensation for that crash, you can't because they're not registered.
Well, it takes in terms of changing city infrastructure, bike lane configuration, for example, that's more of a medium-term solution because it takes a long time to get those projects together. Is there anything that can be done in the shorter term that you think would be worthwhile to prevent bike versus bike accidents?
Well, we need to better regulate what's considered an e-bike and who's allowed on the bike path, and that should be pretty fast and shouldn't be very complicated. It's not rocket science. So that's one element. We should also provide better protection for people when they do get involved in a crash. So that's one of the demands that we had in 2022 when we went in a parliamentary commission and said, well, we should extend the SAQ coverage for all crashes and all road users who get injured in crashes, no matter whether a motor vehicle is involved or not. And then cities have to speed up and try and keep up with the rate of the rising popularity of cycling and all micromobility devices, really, and not be shy when it comes to reallocating space, because ultimately that's what's needed to address the challenges that we have, both in road safety, but also in the GHG emissions of our transportation sector.
On the question of the SAAQ extending coverage to bicycles, even if no motor vehicle is involved in the accident, the SAAQ, that's an insurance scheme. That's financed by people who buy into it by getting a license. So why should they be compensating people who have not bought into it and in fact may not even have a permit?
Well, because we're basically talking almost about the same people. 9 out of 10 cyclists also have a driver's license and do contribute to the system. And so the day they decide not to take their car but to hop on a bike, not only are they giving a service to society because they're lowering the road risk altogether for themselves and all road users, but the problem is then they're not covered while they're the same person and they are actually contributing. And at the end of the day, it's not it's a matter of a choice of society. And if we say, and we're saying, everybody's saying how we should move from individual cars to other modes of transportation, sustainable modes of transportation, well, the least we can do is make sure that people who do that choice, that is helping all of us in the challenges we face, that they're not left to themselves to face all the consequences if something goes wrong.
Well, we could also say to them, get a bike license.
Well, that would be, there have been bike licenses in the past, and those have proven more costly. The system has proven more costly to operate than it brings in revenue. And if you think of the principle of eco-fiscality, where basically we're trying to put a price on behaviors that are the most risky, dangerous, or not desirable, and trying to subsidize or encourage behaviors that are collectively helping us, that's exactly what cycling is about. There are a million ways in which, as a society, we're actually subsidizing the use of individual automobile, whether it's by the parking places that we're offering for free, that we're maintaining, that we're clearing of snow, whether we have a car or not. Well, it can also go the other way around and say, well, these people who are leaving their cars in the garage, they deserve to be better protected and encouraged in that kind of behavior.
Magali Bebronne, thank you very much for your time this morning.
You're welcome. Have a good day.
Magali Bebronne is the program director for the cyclist advocacy group Vélo Quebec.